Good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Red Chip Poker Podcast. My name is James Sweeney, aka Split Suit. Coach Weasel is going to be hosting today's episode, but I wanted to pop in real quick and let you know that this is the conclusion of Season 5. But I also wanted to let you know that Season 6 is going to be firing up shortly. However, we are going to change things up a little bit, and instead of releasing it the way that we have for years and years and years, we're going to start making the podcast available for core members and also pro members. So if you haven't joined us already, now is the perfect time to do so. Just go to redchippoker.com, choose either a core or a pro membership, and we're going to be putting everything right in there. And if you're a little bit bummed because you really enjoy the podcast and you've really been enjoying listening to it for free over the years, I totally understand. We will probably release a free episode every now and then, I don't know, maybe quarterly, give or take. But if you've been on the fence about joining either core or pro, now is the perfect time to do so. Continue getting the podcast as well as all of the excellent lessons included in both the core and the pro membership. So again, now is the perfect time to do so, redchippoker.com. And I really hope that you enjoy not just this episode wrapping up Season 5, but also the upcoming Season 6. So without further ado, Coach Weasel, take over today's episode. Let's fire right into it. Enjoy.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Red Chip Poker Podcast. This is Coach Weasel, and the topic of this episode is the Mindset HP model. Now, there's a really good chance that you've never heard of the Mindset HP model, and that's because I made it up. Actually, it's fairly rare that we hear poker players talking about mental game. And that's because mental game coaches have promoted the idea that the mental game is extremely complex. And in order to be taught the mental game, we must have a qualified psychologist or perhaps a hypnotherapist, someone who's a specialist in the area of mental game, psychology of performance, but not necessarily someone who's an expert at poker. And while those individuals can often tell us more about the brain than a poker player can, the application of their knowledge on the human brain may not always apply directly to the on-the-ground experience that real poker players have to deal with. And that's why from time to time, it's probably a good idea to listen to a poker player talk about mental game, even if they're not necessarily an expert on how the brain works. After all, poker players are the ones who actually have to try out this stuff at the table and see if it generates any improvement in the mental game. And in my experience, most poker players don't actually need a specialist or an entire course on brain psychology in order to improve their mental game. Besides, sometimes these formats are simply not practical. For example, imagine a player who has a mindset issue where they really struggle moving up stakes. Every time they play the next stake up, they're dealing with scared money problems. Does reading a book on why it doesn't make sense to be scared necessarily the ultimate solution to not playing scared money? Players don't play scared money because they think it's logical to be scared. They understand that it's illogical, but they still experience these mindset issues. So a format, let's say a video format or a book format for improving your mental game is not necessarily the most practical approach to getting good at mental game. What if there was a way that your mindset could receive a sharp boost over the course of 20 minutes, not from a brain specialist, but from a poker player? That's what we're going to be looking at today. This is my Mindset HP model. So what is the Mindset HP model? HP is an acronym that stands for hit points. If you're a gamer, you'll be familiar with this idea. Hit points describes the health a game character has left. A game character could have 1,000 HP, for example, and every time that game character takes damage, the game character has less HP. Once the HP gets to 0, that game character is unconscious or dead. Either way, that game character is out of the action. Now, don't worry too much if you're not a gamer. That is the extent of what you need to know about HP. It is a number that represents your current health. And we want to think about our mindset as being a number of hit points. And during any poker session, our mindset will take damage. So we might start off a poker session with 1,000 HP as our mindset, but every time certain types of event takes place, we suffer HP damage. So we start off with 1000 HP, maybe there's some kind of suck out that takes 50 HP damage. We're left with 950 HP as a result. Now, the amount of damage that we take depends on the types of events that we face. So as a general rule, losing an entire stack is going to be more damaging to our mindset HP than losing a small pot. Some of the events that damage our mindset can be quite surprising. So we find that even if the outcome of an event is positive, it can result in damage to our mindset HP. A simple example is we get the chips in good against a fish, but there's a huge sweat. Maybe the fish turns some kind of combo draw on the turn, and by the time our hand finally holds by the river, we kind of feel mentally exhausted. That's mindset damage. The outcome was favorable for us, but due to the big sweat in the process, now our mindset's taken some damage. It doesn't necessarily mean that we are tilted straight away, but enough events like that will slowly wear away at our mindset HP. It could just be missing a run of flops. Every time we miss a flop, we take 5 HP damage to our mindset. And this might have a multiplier effect where by the time we are missing our 5th or 6th flop in a row, we start thinking that maybe we're cursed. Every subsequent flop we miss after that deals increasingly more damage to our mindset HP. So we have this picture of starting a session with the maximum amount of HP, and slowly that HP value gets worn away during the course of a session by various different events, some of which deal a large amount of damage to our mindset, some of which deal a much smaller amount of damage. The objective here is to avoid critically low and 0 HP. So critically low is perhaps when we get into the bottom 10 or 20% of our remaining HP. 0 HP means that we've run out of hit points, essentially. Now, just to translate, what does that mean in a real-world situation? So critical HP, or perhaps below 20%, our mindset has taken a battering and we are on the verge of tilt. So we're not tilted yet, but we'll recognize that there are some intensely negative thought processes occurring in the background. So we're intensely questioning all of our decisions in a very negative way. And we're definitely not playing our A game at this stage. We're playing our C game or worse. So at this point in time, we don't really want to be at the table. This is a good point to leave the table because by the time we get to 0 HP, things are going to be even worse. Now, of course, our objective is not really to leave a poker table at any point. If we've scheduled an hour or 2 for grinding, we want to grind for that long. We don't necessarily want to have to leave the session early. So the objective here is not to reach critical HP and then leave the table. The objective is never to reach critical HP by managing the damage our mindset takes. We'll talk about that shortly. By the time we get to 0 HP, we are, for all intents and purposes, no longer a player in the game. We're just a donator to the dreams and bankrolls of other players. So we are there, we're conscious, we're clicking buttons, but the longer we play, the more damage we're likely doing to our bankroll. So we're still playing, but we're not a player in the game, if that makes sense. So the next question is, how do we improve our mindset in a practical way without taking an entire course on brain psychology? The answer is potentially simpler than you might think. Now, just a disclaimer here, we don't want to discourage the seeking of professional advice if you have a genuine problem with your psychology. That's not the objective here. The objective is just to demonstrate that the average player doesn't necessarily need intensive brain training from a mental game expert. And the reason for that is a mental game, if we treat it in the right way, will have a tendency to improve by itself over time. But we have to set the right parameters in order for that to take place. So here's the key idea. Mindset, or we can think about it as our max HP number, mindset will grow over time provided we avoid critical and 0 HP. And if you're not a gamer, the best analogy here is think about lifting weights. How does it work? We lift weights, we become stronger. As a result, we're able to lift heavier weights. And it's the same with our mindset. The key here is to actually give our mindset a battering without allowing it to reach critical levels. And if we do that, it will automatically grow over a period of time, just in the same way that the weightlifter becomes stronger over a period of time. Now, what is the equivalent analogy for a weightlifter when we think about critical and 0 HP? Well, that would be an example of when the weightlifter overdid things and sustained some type of injury. In the short term, that weightlifter has become much weaker. In fact, that weightlifter has to avoid lifting weights for a period of time until he's fully recovered. So in the short term, because he pushed things too far, he actually made himself weaker. The objective of the weightlifter is to push himself to that limit to get the maximum benefit from his training, but not push beyond that point. Once he pushes beyond that point, he could sustain a temporary injury that makes him temporarily weaker, or worst case scenario is he could sustain a really bad injury that actually prevents him from ever being able to reach his maximum strength levels. So when we think about this, it's a really simple, straightforward, practical model for improving our mindset. We're not trying to remember some abstract concepts to do with brain psychology. We are actively training our mindset by using our mindset at the tables and actively avoiding pushing our mindset to a point where we can sustain damage. So thinking about that mindset HP model, let's focus on some key takeaways. What can we learn from this simple model? One takeaway is that no one has a perfect mindset. Everyone has a breaking point. Sometimes when we listen to experts on the topic, they'll promote the idea that we can have a perfect mindset. And the idea is that once our mindset is perfect, absolutely nothing will faze us. Having a perfect mindset is like having a weightlifter who has infinite strength. It's not something that exists. That weightlifter can become much stronger over a period of time, but he's never going to be infinitely strong. There's always going to be a weight that weightlifter will not be able to lift. His objective is to lift weights that are an appropriate challenge for him. And it's the same way with poker players' mindset. It's about choosing an appropriate challenge. Something that pushes our mindset without reaching critical or 0 HP levels. Let's think about a quick example of that. So imagine the player we mentioned earlier in this episode, a player with a quote, perfect mindset. Perhaps he's been told that he can have a perfect mindset after he's finished his video course on brain psychology. That player can't understand why he suddenly tilts, or let's say starts playing scared money when shooting the next limit up. At the previous limit, he appears to have a perfect mindset. As soon as he moves to the next limit up, his mindset crumbles. How can that be the case if his mindset is perfect? Now let's analyze this through the lens of the mindset HP model. When this player moves up limits, the HP damage he is taking at that limit is much larger. So if we put some numbers on this just to help understand, let's say this player has 1000 HP. When he plays at his current limit for a period of an hour and a half, perhaps he sustains 600 HP worth of damage. So a decent battering for his mindset, but still well above the realms of being in critical HP. Now imagine that player moves up to the next limit, and let's just say the mindset damage is double. It makes sense. There's twice as much money on the table. Well, how much damage is he sustaining then? Well, he's sustaining 1200 HP worth of damage over the course of his regular session time. Guess what? That puts him in critical and at serious risk of reaching 0 HP. He's setting himself up for serious mindset problems in that session. So what is the solution based on the mindset HP model? What if that player simply plays shorter sessions when taking a shot at the next limit? And if that player continues to do that, making sure to either exit the game or move down limits at the appropriate time, he's giving his mindset a good battering. The overall HP of his mindset will continue to grow till eventually he reaches the point where he can comfortably play a full session at the next limit. So hopefully we get the idea. It's not about assuming that our mindset is perfect or infinitely strong. It's about making a realistic appraisal of what our mindset can cope with and putting ourselves in situations that, while they might be tough, they are something that we can deal with while still maintaining HP levels above critical. Let's think about another takeaway from the mindset HP model. The takeaway is recovery times for mindset generally fast, provided we don't critical or 0 HP. So we might play a fairly tough session, but it's in the realms of what our mindset can cope with. In most cases, we will be in a good frame of mind for playing another session later that same day, or playing a session the following day. However, if we allow our mindset to critical or 0, that's the same as a weightlifter taking a physical injury. He could no longer continue to lift the same amount of weight. He's going to have to take a period of days or weeks before he can recover to full strength. And it's the same for poker players. If we allow our mindset to critical, we're going to need a much longer period of time to recover to max HP. Psychology experts, when talking about poker, sometimes use terms such as accumulated tilt. So the idea is you haven't fully recovered by the time you start playing your next session, and you find yourself tilting really early in the session after 5 or 10 minutes. It's because you've got all of this damage that you've sustained in a previous session. You haven't been able to recover from it. Understand that the further our HP gets into the critical, or if it reaches 0 HP, the longer it's going to take to recover. And the problem with 0 HP is you may never recover from that. You may spew away your entire bankroll and not be able to continue playing. You may also decide that poker's not worth it and decide to quit. But if you'd been able to recognize that your mindset HP was heading in a dangerous direction, you would have been able to move out of the way of that bullet. You wouldn't have been around at the point where you decided you are going to quit poker for good or spew away your entire bankroll. So if we protect ourselves in time, recovery times are fairly short. You'll be up and running after a few hours, back again at max HP. Here's another key takeaway from the mindset HP model. The takeaway is that we are not passive victims. We exert some control over our experience. And this is a very powerful takeaway. Sometimes mindset courses promote the idea that we just have to deal with what comes at us. We have no control over our experience. The game can throw anything at us at any time, and we need to be able to deal with it. Whereas the mindset HP model says, actually, different events exert different amounts of damage on our HP, and we can control the types of situations that we're in. We can control the limits we play, for example. We can understand viably how long we can play a certain limit before our HP takes unsustainable damage. Another example is in-game high-variance situations. Think about all-in pre-flop flips as an example. Let's just say roughly all of the money goes in and the EV is going to be close to 0. It's a very marginal spot. It's not important to our win rate, but there's a high HP damage associated with that because we're going to be swinging up and down stacks. Remember, as we said earlier, even if we win a lot of flips, this is still potentially taking mindset damage because of the sweat involved in the process. There's probably going to be a moment in that flip where it feels like we're possibly not going to win. So think about that in terms of an EV calculation. The EV is close to 0, maybe even slightly positive, but if we factor in the HP damage, it might not be worth it. Because think about it this way, the faster we sustain HP damage during the course of a session, the smaller the amount of time we're able to play that session before we reach our breaking point. So these high variance marginal situations are decreasing the time we can play, but not really adding very much to our win rate. Now, a mathematical purist would always look at a situation that has, let's say, an expectation of 0.01 EV and say, well, you should take that situation. It's plus EV. But there's another layer to this. We're not machines. We're humans, and we have a finite amount of mindset HP. So a situation that's very damaging to our mindset, but doesn't provide us much in the way of EV, we might want to rethink whether those types of situations are worthwhile. So specifically talking about high variance scenarios that yield a low profitability. Might not be worth it. Avoid those. Yes, we technically miss a small amount of EV in the short term, but if the end result is we can play for twice as long while sustaining a good mindset, That's technically going to be much more profitable for us overall. Now, much of the mindset HP model is based around avoiding critical HP. And we're going to need to pay careful attention to some of the flags that indicate that our HP is heading in that direction. And once we start heading in that direction, we need to think seriously about, okay, should we take a break, allow our mindset to recover? Should we move down limits so the HP damage being sustained is much lower? Recognizing when our mindset is moving in that direction does take a decent amount of experience. It's something that we'll improve at over time. Again, notice that we'll improve by doing this, not by reading about it in a book. The way that we can improve here is to review our thought patterns at set intervals. If you like, you could even set a timer to go off every 20 minutes during a session, and at that point, make an honest review of your mindset. Now, the human brain is very good at deceiving us. There are many examples of situations where a player has assumed they have a perfect mindset for a session and they've been tilting money all over the place. But we'll also find that we're able to evaluate our mindset more honestly over time as well. One of the initial techniques I like to recommend is to make use of a timer for your session. So don't just sit down at the tables and randomly decide when you'll end the session. Set a specific session time. For example, today I'm going to play for 90 minutes, then I'm going to quit the session. If at some point during your 90-minute session, you either feel like quitting the session early, perhaps maybe because you're up, or when it gets to the end of the 90 minutes, you want to continue playing, this is a really good indicator that your mindset is not functioning optimally. So at that point, you'll want to explore some of the other thought processes that are occurring, maybe sometimes at a subconscious level. Why is it so difficult to play for 90 minutes, for example? Why is your brain asking you to quit the session early? Or if you reach that 90 minutes, you want to continue playing, why is your brain telling you to do that? There's probably something that's triggering an emotion in that scenario. Because on a really rational level, we say we're going to play for 90 minutes. We should just be able to sit down, play for 90 minutes, then leave the session. So if there's some resistance to that, it's probably occurring on an emotional level. And it's a really good indicator that your mindset is compromised. This is just one example. There are other things that will indicate that we're maybe approaching critical or zero HP. And whatever it is that tells us that we're not playing our best game, we need to be prepared to either quit or move down. Now, quitting early is really not the ideal thing to be doing here because we miss out on volume. So if we do reach this situation, it is still better to quit than to play while tilted. But we need to ask ourselves, why did it reach that stage? What type of mindset damage was I sustaining in that session that caused me to reach critical and have to quit the session to prevent further damage to my bankroll? When you establish what it was the session time too long? Were the limits too high? Was it the way that we were losing? There are likely logical steps we can take in the future to avoid going critical. And if we can avoid going critical, as we've discussed, our mindset is going to naturally grow over a period of time. Like that weightlifter, we'll be constantly getting stronger and stronger. Not by reading a book or watching a video series, but by practical application, practical training of our mindset. Now, just to be clear, I don't discourage watching a course on mindset. It might be a good investment for you, but such courses often take quite a bit of time, and it seems to me that there's probably a bit of a low-hanging fruit here for getting a sharp boost in your mindset without having to invest a large amount of time, and that's what we've been discussing here with the Mindset HP model. Thanks very much for listening. This was Coach Weasel, and this was the Red Chip Poker Podcast.
And that is going to wrap it up for this episode and also for Season 5 overall. Hopefully you enjoyed. As always, if you have any comments or questions, you can always join us on Discord, redchippoker.com/Discord to join for free. Thousands of players over there talking poker every single day. Jump in the conversation right this moment. And remember, if you want to continue on in Season 6, make sure to join today over at redchippoker.com. Grab either a core or a pro membership, and I'll see you in there. We'll continue this podcast and continue having a lot more fun discussing a lot of poker strategy like always. Really hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something, and I look forward to seeing you over on the Discord and also in Season 6. So again, this has been James Sweeney, aka Split Suit. I hope you have a great day, and of course, good luck out there, and happy grinding.